the Executive Governor of Plateau State, President Manasseh, Your Excellency, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senator George Akume, the Chief of Staff, the Governor, the Permanent Secretary Policy in the Office of the SGF, my colleague SGSs that are here present, at least I am aware, I know that Nasarawa State is here in person, Ogun is here in person, Bauchi is here in person, Katsina is here in person, and Niger, Akwa Ibom, Cross River is here in person. A few other states are represented. One or two are on their way from the airport right now. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I greet you all this morning. I welcome you to this second quarter meeting of the Secretaries to State Governments. Permit me to remember our elders and seniors, the former of Plateau State. About 9 of them are here. Thank you for coming. I welcome you to Plateau State, the state with the best weather, with the best people, with the best food. Since yesterday, all our visitors have been remarking, wow, they are enjoying the weather, and none of them has put on their air conditioners. So we welcome you to Plateau State. We expect that you will have a good time here. It's unfortunate that this event is clashing with the UN General Assembly, and a lot of the secretaries to governments are out of the country currently. That is why the turnout is a bit lower. This event was built to hold in June, and 2 days to that event, we had a misfortune in this country. The former President Bola passed on, and so it had to be shifted, and that's why we brought it till today. So on that note, I welcome you. I wish us all fruitful deliberations and God's blessings. Thank you.
Please, can we put our hands together for the Secretary to the Government of Plateau State, Architect Samuel Nanchan. Colleagues, warmly to Plateau State. For the few days you're spending here, it is believed that you will explore and enjoy the goodness of Plateau State. To set the ball rolling, the context of today, we all know that the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, distinguished Senator George Akume, FNIM, will speak to us, and this will enable us to set the ball rolling in the context. Put your hands together for distinguished Senator George Akume, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. A round of applause for him, please.
My dear brother, a great Nigerian, an evolving statesman. When we talk of Benue Plateau State, our views and our shared brotherhood remain very, very strong, whether we are from Plateau or we are from Benue or we are from Nasarawa states. Your Excellency, thank you very much for being with us today. The Secretary to Plateau State Government and your colleagues from the sister states here assembled, the former Secretaries to Government sitting here. Indeed, you are now elder statesmen, and it's remarkable you have served before. The Permanent Secretary, Political and Economic Affairs Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation
permanent secretaries, and other top government functionaries here, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure and a sincere sense of duty that I welcome you all to this important meeting of the Forum of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation and Secretaries to Government of States. This meeting is the second of its kind since the inception of the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, and the first for this year. The theme of the meeting today, understanding the dynamics and the roles and functions of secretaries to the government of states, underscores the unique position we occupy at the intersection of governance, coordination, and policy implementation. We need to remind us that our job requires absolute discretion, diligence, loyalty, and a deep understanding of the political and administrative landscape, as well as understanding the skills of managing cracks in the areas of conflict in the landscape. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, while we must remain aligned with the broader vision of delivering good governance to the people, it becomes imperative that we consistently re-examine the dynamics of our roles and adapt to emerging realities in the evolving nature of governance. There is no gainsaying that the Secretary to the Government is the engine room of all government operations. At the heart of our responsibilities are policy coordination, cabinet affairs management, intergovernmental and interministerial coordination, institutional memory, and continuity in strategic advisory roles. The reality of the moment is the fact that our roles as secretaries have become challenging and dynamic due to the ever-evolving technological advancement which has shifted significantly in recent times. The complexity of governance today therefore demands that we embrace digital tools for tracking, analysis, and communication. Citizens are now more enlightened, connected, and more demanding, and as such, our policies must reflect transparency, responsiveness, and inclusivity. In the face of the current security challenges bedeviling our country, the Secretaries to Government who must be proactive in supporting security coordination and constantly upgrade our leadership skills. At this juncture, let me remind you that, considering the nature of our governance structure, our work is interconnected. Policies, programs, and projects conceived and formulated at the federal level are cascaded to the states for implementation. Therefore, this forum offers opportunity to harmonize policy implementation strategies and to address cross-cutting challenges geared towards promoting subnational alignment with national development plans. Distinguished participants, I urge you to maximize this platform to deepen our collaborative frameworks and strengthen vertical and horizontal integration in public administration. I urge us all to remain committed to excellence, integrity, and continuous improvement in our services to the nation. In conclusion, I want to thank His Excellency, the Governor, and his government for providing facilities for this meeting and for rendering many other areas of support for the success of this forum. God bless you all. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Professor Sam Igu will take the next few minutes to speak to us on the topic of discussion, the main topic of why we are here. Once again, let's encourage him with a round.
In my presentation, since I've given the electronic copy of the presentation out, I have a section that basically deals with the evolution of the office of the SSG. But what I did was to go back to the background of the United States experience and the fact that when the US founded their new country, after running away from different parts of Europe, they came to America to start a new experiment. One of the things they decided to do was to reject the parliamentary system which they would have inherited from Britain. They rejected it and decided to invent a new political arrangement for themselves. And the US was the first to choose a presidential system of government, where the president does not suffer executive incapacity. A president or a governor that is elected by all citizens of the country or of the state. And even though underlined by the principle of separation of power was one powerful individual who could determine who comes to serve in that government. And this whole idea of strong executive is critical because if you go back to the era of the parliamentary politics of the First Republic, power was a bit diffused between the premier at the regional level and the prime minister at the federal level, because the premier and the prime minister were products of parliament, and therefore they didn't or couldn't assert that type of power. In fact, at a point in the history of this country, between 63, 64, 65 in particular, there was a big tussle between the prime minister of this country and the president, who constitutionally was designated as head of state and the prime minister designated as head of government. And it was difficult to tell who was superior to who. There was an impasse in this country and they had to broker peace, you know, and of course the First Republic collapsed soon after. And while we were preparing to return to Second Republic, that transition program that was designed by the Muritala Obasanjo regime told the CDC, the Constitution Drafting Committee, that look, one of the things we must examine is the form of government. Should we retain parliamentary system or we should go for presidential? In their wisdom, they adopted a presidential system. And the reason was very clear. We don't want to return to the confusion and the power tussle of the First Republic. So today, you have strong executive presidents elected at the national level. You have strong governors without limitation of power at the state level. And if you follow clearly the development, you would understand that the office of Secretary to Government of the Federation evolved coinciding with our change of form of government from parliamentary to presidential system. And of course, we know clearly what is the work of the SGF. So the choice of a presidential system has made a difference in our life. And that is why in 1979, we have to redesignate the post of the principal cabinet secretary in the Federal Executive Council to become the office of Secretary of the Federation. And we are familiar with the terms of reference of that office. The terms of reference of SSGs actually derive logically from that of the SGF. It parodies it in many respects. And if you look at that slide, where I discuss what these functions are, you will know that in fact, once the position of the office of the SGF was elaborated, it also expanded, the locus of power and responsibilities of the SSG. You have all these in my presentation, which I have decided deliberately to pass over them, and then you can read for yourself. So let me therefore go to what I think is the heart of my presentation, so that I don't lose the time I need to make the point I want to make. Now, the first point that I make here is that to understand your role to start with, and to begin to understand the dynamics against which you have to swim and survive, you must return to the fact that we are fated with a presidential system of government. What is very unique about this system is that you have one person that is stronger than virtually all other institutions. It's not only in Nigeria. The literature recognizes this as the perils of presidentialism and subordinates all other institutions to itself. It's a winner-takes-all system. Once you are in power, sometimes the opposition keep to their toes because they are aware of the enormous power concentrated in the office. And whether we like it or not, the office of the president at the national level and the governor that you serve at the state level remains the most important center in terms of recruitment of the political elites. And at the same time, it weakens what we call the deliberative and compromise-oriented process of decision-making. So you are serving very powerful executive officers. The system we are discussing also encourages personalization of power and clientele politics. A governor can choose to do favor. A president can choose to do favor to anybody he wants without the constraints, that you can have in the parliamentary system. And I think that the SSGs, for example, know that part of the responsibility that they have is to moderate the impact of that patronage and clientele forms of politics, to mediate, not to abrogate it, but to mediate. I've also said here that in many systems, like the US, presidential systems are built on strong party systems. We are talking of political parties that are societally rooted. We are talking about political parties that are institutionalized. We are talking about political parties that are platforms of policies. And we are talking about political parties that are driven by internal, that are driven by internal logic of openly selecting leaders and selecting candidates for public office. Internal democracy is a strong element of strong party system. Unfortunately, we don't have that in this country. And that has implications for governance. You have implications where, for example, political parties don't exist as one monolithic entities. They are broken into factions. And there are different factions peddling influence around the president and around the governor. In fact, in my recent reading of the work of Thomas Carothers, who talks about the fact that many third world countries like our own don't have functional political parties. He talks of what he calls the standard lamentation about political parties. They are run by godfathers, they are run by financiers, and they are not internally coherent. What this means is that you do not have stability around governance issues. This for me is key. And as SSGs, you need to understand the very volatile political context in which you operate. Because the parties exist in factions, and this has implications for policy. Now, I also have this point that if you understand the roles performed by the SSG, which I outline in the slides that I refuse to go through, you will be bothered about this unnecessary or imagined rivalry between the position of SSGs and the position of the Chief of Staff to the Governor. If you are very clear about the terms of reference, that does not need to happen. But it happens here. If you look at it by design, a secretary to the government focuses on policy coordination and implementation, and serving as key advisor and liaising across different government departments. A chief of staff, on the other hand, is primarily responsible for the smooth operation and management of a specific executive's office, this time around the governor, often acting as a gatekeeper and strategic advisor. These two offices are very powerful offices, but they are completely different entities that you are dealing with. While some chief of staffs have enjoyed more than their fair share of power, we have seen that in this country. You know, the truth is that what they do is often behind the scene and should not be in conflict with the work of the SSG. And I also noted that even though SSGs are political appointees of the governor, they need to walk a clear line. Yes, they can be involved in what I call the politics of policy, but not in partisan politics that drags them into that arena. They need to keep themselves, focused on supporting their principle and providing that element of coordination that fits into delivery of public good to citizens, instead of contesting for spaces, with people that you don't need to contest spaces with. I think another point that I want to mention is that as SSGs, you come across the complexity of identity politics that goes on in the state. And when I talk of complexity of identity politics, I'm talking about layers of identities that you have to deal with, and the kind of representations that people make. More often than not, ethnic identity is key. More often than not, religious politics is obvious. More often than not, there are communal and local level conflicts that you need to understand, and that you need, in terms of engaging and advising, you need to be on top of your job and understand that your daily encounter is with mobilization of local politics, which can detract, and you need to do this very well. And I do think that once you are in this position, what you require is a combination of denomination of experience, the art of seeking compromise, solution at all points, even sometime before reaching your principal. You need conflict management ability and ability to negotiate between contending interests so that you can balance and harmonize them at the level of policy, coordination, and implementation. I also want to suggest that once you are in this situation, you need to listen to what I say as part of my concluding remarks. My point is, as frontline institution or front office of the government house, you are saddled with the responsibility to monitor, coordinate, and implement government policies and programs. as the equivalent of the engine room at state level of the SGF at the federal level, you drive policy formulation, you drive policy harmonization and implementation, and you also bring under close monitoring the MDAs that work under you. And so, to survive in this position, you need the following. One, constant adjustments in leadership styles and modes to adapt to the complexity of party politics, the layers of identities, and the contradictory demands they make on the policy processes. The second point is that you need to regularly build the capacity of administrative staff you work with around behavioral sensitivities to perform successfully in the complex political context that cannot be simply wished away. You also require regular meetings, dialogue, and interactions between your office and top echelon of the bureaucracy and key political actors around the governor to clarify roles and forms of partnerships and collaboration required for success. Foster a compromise-oriented system of decision-making, something that must be cultivated to resolve real and imagined conflicts among the key actors in government house. I also think that you need to invest in ICT governance tools, particularly in this challenging age of ICT and e-governance. And I do believe also that those who occupy this office should be masters of strategic communication, which you require at all times. And finally, in the era of misinformation and disinformation, you need to build the capacity of your office to be able to respond in real time and to be able to have a counter platform of disseminating facts that can whittle the significance of misinformation and disinformation. One remark I would like to make last is that it is very difficult sometimes to function in your position and to be able to make a distinction between what is really coming from your principal and what is coming from people around him. Because I've always made the point that there's no such a thing as a unified presidency. There's no such a thing as a unified government house, because there are so many interests that are asserting themselves, some even just using the name of the governor to do their own personal bid. So you therefore need to operate, in a context in which you are completely alert to your environment. Scan your environment and see how you can actually promote and defend your principle by relying on what is evidence-based and what is helpful to his success. I have removed so many slides. I want to stop here. Thank you, sir.
Together, irrespective of political affiliation, to celebrate your appointment and to put you on the driver's seat to drive the interests of the north central part of Nigeria. And thus far, I want to congratulate you for driving this process. I remember in those days, I used to go to Bedouin as a younger person, and I would see posters about Ride on George. And indeed, he kept riding. And he has risen to this enviable position today. I'm sure in the coming days, your leadership as to where the North Central goes will be very critical. The Federal Permanent Secretary, Political and Economic Affairs, Office of the SGF, our brother Engineer Gagare Nadungu, the Secretary to the Government of Plateau State, Architect Samuel Jato, and other secretaries to the government of the 36 states here present, the Chief of Staff, Plateau State Government House, Builder Jeremiah Satmak, the keynote speaker, the ever erudite Professor Sam Egu, and other speakers, members of the Plateau State Executive Council, former secretaries to the government of the states here present, special advisors, permanent secretaries, chairmen and members of commissions, directors general, chief executives of government boards and parastatals, other top government officials here present, distinguished invited guests, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. I have a very simple job to do, which is to welcome His Excellency the Secretary to the Government of the Federation and the various secretaries to government of states in Nigeria to this very important consultative session. Like Professor Egu just elucidated, the office of the Secretary to Government has become a very critical position in government. Whether during military rule or during civilian regime, since the office came into being, it has become a very critical melting pot in the government structure. As a matter of fact, the Secretary to the State Government and the Secretary to the Government of the Federation is more or less the chief advisor to the governor and the president. And that is why high offices like permanent secretaries, you will have at least 2 of them domiciled under that office at the state level. I don't know how many at the federal level. It's 1, sir. Oh, 5. 5 permanent secretaries under the SGF. That underscores the weight attached to that office, because the number of issues that must be attended to under that office are quite large. And as it is in our democracy, memos are minuted from the governor, not to the deputy. Memos are minuted from the president, not to the vice president, but to the Secretary of Government. It therefore becomes critical that the choice of the person that holds that office becomes very important. Because often than not, when the person has vacated that office, he becomes a statesman. He becomes an elder in the land because he possesses a lot of institutional knowledge. And that is why for us on the Plateau, since coming on board, we decided to locate all the past secretaries of government and make sure we carry them along. We have carried them irrespective of the political umbrella under which they serve, knowing that they possess a lot of knowledge and information that will help government to make the right judgments and evaluations. It therefore becomes important that this forum of potential statesmen at the states, chaired by a statesman at the federal level, that this forum meets from time to time in order to rub minds together, to be able to share notes together and see how they can improve the machinery of government. I want to welcome all the secretaries of government from the various states and to urge you to remember that this appointment is an appointment of trust, that this is a sacred responsibility, and that in the discharge of your duties and functions, you must know at all times that you must not mislead the chief executive, because posterity will judge all the actions or inactions of government. I am sure that all of you have been chosen because your governors have implicit confidence in you. I therefore urge you not to betray that confidence and make sure you work assiduously to coordinate all the MDAs that statutorily report to the governor through you, and make sure that you do so with integrity. Nigeria is at a point where all hands must be on deck to be able to move us forward. I believe that after elections, we must keep politics aside and face governance. I therefore believe wholeheartedly in supporting the initiatives of Mr. President under his renewed hope agenda, because whether I like it or not, that the agenda must impact the people of my state. And that is why I've taken initiatives to make sure that we work in concert with the federal government for the benefit of our people. And by the grace of God, we'll continue to do so. On this note, I'd like to welcome the SGF and his team. I want to welcome all the secretaries to government of the state, governments of states, and to wish all of you successful deliberations, that the communique of this meeting will prove very useful in oiling the wheel of governance. For the SGF, sir, our sincere greetings to Mr. President, and we wish you a safe flight back to Abuja. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. Thank you. May I invite secretaries to government of states or their representatives to please come forward. Please, Plateau State government officials, move to the Little Rayfield office of the governor, because he will be moving straight there from here. Thank you. Former secretaries to government of the states that are here. Hey, photographers, yes, let's work it out. Former secretaries to government of state will climb next. Yes, please. Yes, please.